Hey, welcome to Be With the Word. I am Dr. Gerry Crete. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Atlanta, Georgia. And I am here with Mac Barron. And today we are going to be talking about being intentional, penitential, and reverential this Advent as we approach addictive or even problematic behaviors in our lives that we might want to change. So before we get going, Be With the Word is a show where we discuss the readings, Sunday readings, from a psychological and personal and family-oriented perspective. And we will provide you with also some takeaways, some action items you can do in your daily life in this Advent season. If you haven't read the Sunday readings yet, feel free to go over to Hear the Word, which is our sister podcast. And there I will gently and in a meditative manner read the Sunday readings to you and then have a meditation. So we hope that you'll join us over there as well. But today I'd like to say hello to Mac Barron. He's here with me. He is the podcaster with his wife Catherine for Catholic in a Small Town, which I understand is the oldest running Catholic podcast of all time. Is that right?
I think the Vatican actually has us beat by like 3 or 4 months, and it's one of those things that we can say it and it's not true at the same time, because we've just kept our same title. There are other shows that have had to change, that have had to rebrand, that have been running longer than ours. The same people have been doing them, but ours, I can't actually confirm that, but I don't know of anybody who's been doing this as long with the same show for the last 15 years.
Okay, so you're like the Doctor Who of Catholic podcasts. That's what I've been waiting to say.
Well, except that we've actually been the same people.
The same people. Oh, right. You don't reincarnate into a new doctor.
Not that I know of.
Okay,
but,
no trends.
My wife would be appreciative if I were to respawn into a better-looking person.
Okay. Well, tell me about you and your wife and what you guys do.
Well, again, my name is Mac Barron, and I'm a father and a podcaster and a Catholic, and I do some woodworking. I've written a book called Clueless in Galilee, a fresh take on the Gospels, available wherever fine books are sold. Sweet. That's not true. I think you can still get it at Amazon, but you'd be lucky to find it anywhere else. And it's a collection of funny little essays about what knuckleheads the disciples were, and how we should cut ourselves some slack when we don't get it. And they were actually hanging around with Jesus, and they didn't get it sometimes.
Oh, I love it.
I've been married to my lovely wife for almost 21 years now, and so that speaks to a great deal of her patience, and kindness. Yeah, and you know what a blessed dude I am. We've been doing our podcast for 565 episodes.
Wow.
So it's almost 15 years. Yeah, and we are both from South Georgia, just different sides of South Georgia. Right. And we were living in a small town when we started the show. And when we moved to a larger town, we did not want to rebrand. Gotcha.
So. Well, Mac, I'm excited to have you here, and your book sounds really interesting.
Well, thank you.
And I hope your listeners might go check out Catholic in a Small Town. But today we're going to be talking about the Sunday readings. This is the second Sunday in Advent. And this is only our 56th episode of Be With the Word, but
you're getting there, buddy.
Well, I'm getting there.
Hang in there, little camper. It's going to be great.
And so we want to just kind of connect up a little bit the readings and talk about our title, which is about really being intentional this Advent season and recognizing that Advent is a penitential season, which I don't think most people are aware, right? Is that it's actually, and I go to the Eastern Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as an Eastern Catholic, we actually have a fast for Advent. I think it's called Philip's Fast, and we actually give up things during Advent, which I think is not what I'm used to.
That's dumb. I'm an American. That is not what we're about during this season. Wait, there's a season before Christmas?
That's right.
That's nutty. That is crazy.
Okay, I'm going to say something right now that I know I'm going to sound like a curmudgeon. All right, so you can call me on it, as I know you will. Mm-hmm. But in my own neighborhood, and I really don't want to be judgmental to anyone, so it's really a beautiful thing that these people are doing. But there's one house in particular that has a giant blow-up Santa Claus, like 4 times the size of me, next to a giant blow-up reindeer, next to a giant blow-up penguin.
Okay, we're good. We're devolving now.
Grinch. And then there's a giant blow-up minion, all in the front yard. And there's a little childlike part of me that thinks that's kind of cool.
Is the minion decorated in such a way as to make it Christmassy? Is he wearing a hat?
He might have an elf hat.
Okay, all right.
But I better check. I'll check tonight.
Then I will allow it.
But there's an evil part of me. We're going to maybe talk about parts a little bit and how we all have parts in our personality and how we manage those. But there is an evil part in me, believe it or not, right? That wants to, like, sneak in the middle of the night with like a big knife and stab them. I know that's psychotic, right? But there is that. And then, of course, there's another part of me that's like, how could you think such a thing, right? And there's kids in that house and everything. But why is it that I have that evil, so to speak, reaction? I think it's because there's something that bothers me about the pure commercialization of Christmas.
Right. It's personifying a feeling, a negative underlying feeling that you have already. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That is the personification of that feeling.
Yeah.
What you're seeing happening in your neighbor's yard.
Yeah. And you know what? I have this perspective that nobody practices anymore, and I don't know what to do about, which is that we actually shouldn't have any lights on or anything. We could put up our tree and maybe even not turn the lights on yet until Christmas Day. And then there's that whole, maybe I'm from Canada. I don't know if it was more practiced there or European, but there's the 12 days of Christmas. And those are the celebratory days, not before Christmas.
Right.
But I feel like that our society has kind of changed that. So I don't know that I can fight it.
No, you absolutely can't. Okay, that's not quite true. You can fight it. But it's like holding back the tide. I'm a convert.
Okay, right.
And so growing up, I didn't even know that Advent existed. Right? Advent wasn't even a thing. It was Christmas season. It started the day after Thanksgiving when you went and got your tree and you started putting up lights and the wooden reindeer and stuff in the front yard.
Yeah.
Okay, so as one becomes a Catholic, as one does, then you start realizing, this season of preparation, getting your heart ready for the celebration of our Lord.
Right.
And so you start realizing that, wait a minute, this whole thing that our country does leading not just immediately after Thanksgiving, but immediately after Halloween. Like on October 29th, they start putting out Christmas decorations in stores for you to consume, right?
Right.
And so I think that starts eating away at us both on a spiritual level because we're realizing how sort of the intrinsic poisonousness of consumerism mixed in with our faith telling us, no. This is not the time for celebration right now. This is the time for preparation. But we've got Christmas movies that we're celebrating. We've got, it's fun to hang garland and to put up lights. And we want to celebrate with our culture around us. Mm-hmm. But we've got our faith telling us, no, this is not quite the time yet. Save it. It's
and you know
hard to do.
What else is disappointing to me is that on the day after Christmas, all the lights are off. Everybody takes everything down. It's over. It's like suddenly it's over. Yeah. And I feel like that's really the opposite of how it should be. Like, we should be having that preparation, that anticipation. And like last week we were talking about, on Be With the Word, waiting, right? The importance of waiting and learning to wait. And getting excited about something rather than having instant gratification. And so this idea that throughout Advent we're waiting, and then we celebrate, and then we can enjoy a period of celebration.
Right.
It's not that it's over, and now we're on to Valentine's Day.
But the programming of society has gone against that now.
Yeah.
So it's not that you can't fight it. We absolutely can. And I think in today's show, we're going to talk about some things that we can do to fight against that.
So let's do that. Because what would it mean to make Advent a little bit more the way it was intended to be by being, intentional? Like, what would it mean? What would be some ways that as a family even, right? And that's one of the reasons I was excited to have you on. I mean, you're a family man and, you're raising kids in the faith. And how can we really change the way we do Advent just in ways that will be meaningful? Does anything come up for you?
Well, meaningful and doable. Because I think all of us have a tendency to try to go all in. And there's a lot that can go wrong with that. Right. There's the human tendency to, as the first time you fail, like, screw it, we're not doing any of this stuff.
Right.
And then there's also the fact that we have to live with people around us. You know, we have children and we have wives or husbands, and that it has to everyone, if not everyone on board on the same page, it has to be palatable for those around us, and it has to be joy-filled.
Right.
We can't walk around with sad faces going, we're not going to put up lights.
Blowing up our neighbors' Christmas decorations.
Yeah. although I think it would be nice, though, one morning for them to wake up to the minion torn apart by the reindeer, the inflatable reindeer.
Like a Calvin and Hobbes scene.
Yes.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, with the bloody scene of all the different... Yeah.
So aside from sabotaging your neighborhood lights and tree front yardery, small, incremental, doable things that can maintain the joy of the season without us being curmudgeons in our family and making our children hate how we treated Christmas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So some of the things that are ones that most Catholics know about would be like having an Advent wreath, right? So the second Sunday of Advent, like lighting that second candle. Mm-hmm. You could, if you didn't start it already, you could just get a wreath and do the 2 candles one night and then wait. So every week you're lighting a new candle. And there are Advent little things you can buy where every day you're turning a
Advent
thing.
calendar,
Thank you. Yeah, and when I was a kid, I had little chocolates in them, which I don't know, goes against the whole fasting thing, but at least it helps lead in. But I'm wondering if there's anything as a family, other than those things, right? Maybe in terms of prayer life, or that as a father or as a mother we could introduce.
Well, a lot of whatever specifics that we bring up, like the Advent wreath or an Advent candle, a lot of it goes back to the first thing you mentioned, which is intentionality. And by that, we just mean simply putting some extra thought into what you're doing, instead of just running out to the store and buying the replacement Christmas lights because the ones from last year somehow don't work or are too tangled up right now.
Right.
Do something intentional that day with your family. And again, with me anyway, I keep saying this because I have to speak to myself and step on my own toes. I have to work very carefully not to have what I call the eye roll factor, to bring up some key phrase that my children go, ugh, again with this.
Right.
But having the family meal, everybody should be having a family meal anyway. If you're not sitting around the table most nights of the week with your family, then you're doing it wrong, I think.
Yeah.
Despite being involved in sports, I mean, that is the foundation of intentionality right there. Just doing something as a family every day, adding that time to simply say a prayer and light a candle. And kids love that, especially the youngest child, allowing them to light that candle.
Yeah.
They absolutely love it, and they remember that. It becomes a tradition for them.
Yeah. See, I grew up, and Christmas was always my favorite season. Like, I loved Christmas Day. It seemed like it was always a fairly joyful holiday in my family, but we really didn't have religious traditions. I mean, we had a creche, right? And so we had the creche.
I don't know what a creche is.
Oh, creche! It's the manger scene. The manger, with Jesus.
Why don't you call it a manger scene? What's wrong with you?
I don't know. We always call it.
Is that a French thing?
I guess.
Is that the French thing? Look at this creche. No, get the donkey out of the creche.
That's right. All right. Now I'm feeling oppressed as a Canadian here, like a French Canadian. All right.
Nobody's perfect here. Nobody's perfect.
and I think the idea of saving, I brought that in as an adult, like with my kids, and took the baby Jesus out and didn't put the baby Jesus in until Christmas Day, and that was the big deal.
Right. Yeah, that's what we do too.
Okay.
We put him in a drawer somewhere in the house where we will forget that he is. So we have to get in a fight about it Christmas Eve to figure out where the baby Jesus is.
Find the baby Jesus. It's like, where's Waldo?
Where's Waldo? We paint him with stripes and a little hat.
Right. So, all right. So, but that's just one thing. So I like your point about every day doing something intentional.
And it can be small. It can be literally saying an extra prayer by yourself or with others.
Right. Okay.
To wake up first thing in the morning, and instead of hit the ground running and making the coffee or getting in the shower, just to sit just for a moment and to cross yourself and say, God, help me to help prepare my heart for the coming of the Lord.
Yeah. So just even that, like bringing that into your own personal prayer life very specifically, and also in your family prayer time. And that's just another thing. I mean, praying together as a family wasn't something I grew up with, and I had to learn how to, it sounds silly, like it sounds obvious, but I had to really learn or think about ways to do that. And I mean, I didn't grow up everybody praying the rosary together every night
Right.
or anything like that. Now I think that's just an amazing thing to do. So I would think if you have, even if it's short, right, more than just grace before meals,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of time where everybody sits around and intentionally prays and purposefully brings in the idea that Advent is a penitential. We'll talk about what that means, and is a time of waiting and
Mm-hmm.
preparation, so that maybe yourself and your family could all have that spirit, right?
Yeah, and a lot of this fights against it's the autopilot, and this should be this should be the way it is for every day of our lives. We should be intentional about our faith. That a real danger, I think, especially for people who grew up in the faith, or people that have been converts for 20 years, like myself, is that there is a danger of us slipping into autopilot mode, and autopilot is the opposite of intentionality. Just think about it. Think about what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing bringing you closer to God?
Right.
Or is it just coasting? If it's coasting, it's actually farther away.
All right. So I need to let go of that spirit is just sort of angry at the world and angry at commercialism and my neighbors.
Is that bringing you closer to our Lord or bringing you farther away, Jerry?
Yeah, exactly. And really just focus on how to be intentional myself, and like be that light kind of thing, be that light in the darkness. I want to talk just a bit about penitential, because people don't think of this period as penitential. In fact, everybody's already singing Christmas songs and getting excited. So first of all, what does it mean? What does penitential mean to you?
Well, so I grew up, or when I became a Catholic, I saw Advent as like the anti-Lent. I saw them as like mirror images of each other,
interesting.
right?
Okay.
And I think there's like some beauty and symmetry to that, but it's wrong.
Right. Theologically or whatever.
Theologically
wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So first of all, kids, if you're new Catholic, it's not the anti-Lent. It is.
Anti-Lent. I love it.
It is very much a Lenten season. It is
Yeah.
a season in which you're not stripping away other things so much as you do need to prepare. And one way to prepare yourself for Christ's coming is centering, is taking away extraneous things that are distracting you from and your family, distracting you from Him coming. And among those things, it's so diabolical, is just the crap of the season of the societal season of Christmas.
Right.
Filling the stores, pumping the music in, everything's red, there are candy canes everywhere, and they're just trying to get you to buy. And so not buying into that consumerism can be penitential, because that is an act of sacrifice in order to draw closer to God.
Okay. So now tell me what you think here. I want to try to bring in that psychological dimension and that sort of therapist dimension, right? And I'm curious about the idea of penance, or, like maybe giving up something, letting go of a good, right? Like that might be a good, or might be you're not letting go of good, you're recognizing that there's something in your life that is a problem. It might not be, it could be an addiction, but it might not even rise to the level of addiction, but it's basically not helping you in your life. And yet I think there's a part of us, right, that doesn't want to let go of those things.
Well, of course not.
Yeah.
Because those things bring us comfort. We all self-medicate through anything you could mention right now.
Right.
Is a form of self-medication. If you had a hard day, you do not want to read Confessions. At the end of the day, you want to turn on Netflix.
Right. Okay. So like with that example, right? Because I know that I have a temptation to enjoy movies, and I know you're a movie buff too. And there's nothing wrong intrinsically in maybe enjoying a movie or enjoying a good television program as a way to relax. So if you were to let go, like if you were to choose during this season to say, hey, I'm going to let go of something that is normally my way to self-soothe, but I'm going to do it, I'm going to let it go as a sacrifice. What process do you kind of have to do to get there?
Well, I kind of go from a different perspective of, instead of me letting go of something as a sacrifice, I will instead try to replace it with something that is deepening my faith.
Okay.
And so I don't really see it as I'm going to give up watching television at the end of the day, as so much as, wouldn't it be better for me to read this or to simply spend some time in prayer? And then I may watch a little bit of the television, but instead of 45 minutes, maybe watch 15 minutes. I mean, that's an idea, and it doesn't feel like sacrifice, though it is an act of penance in as much as it is something I enjoy.
Right.
It is, you could consider it, I mean, come on, this is a first world problem. It is suffering in as much as I wanted to do that thing and I'm denying myself. Right. But I try to look at it as not denial, but instead an injection of something that will deepen my faith. And
I like that.
There is a danger in going too heavy with that. Instead of reading St. John of the Cross, for instance, maybe I'll read some C.S. Lewis. Okay. Right? And so it's not a dirge constantly. You don't want to overdo it and heavyify. That's my word for the day. So it doesn't have to be super heavy. It can be light and it can deepen your faith at the same time.
Okay. I'm kind of curious because those examples feel very good and feel very healthy. But sometimes sometimes a problem is a bit bigger than that for some of our listeners. Like maybe the problem is overconsumption of alcohol or drug use, or maybe it's not like that. Maybe it's workaholism, or maybe it's not just watching Netflix, watching 6 hours nonstop, like binging, this kind of thing. So if the problem's a little bigger than that, and the need to self-soothe feels like a compulsion. It feels like a necessary thing, and I don't necessarily expect you to answer this. I'm the therapist, so but I just want to explore this idea a little bit.
Once again, Jerry's calling me for advice. He's got a patient on one phone. He's calling me on the other phone.
Jeez. But I really think, and I'm curious if you how you relate to it, or if you've seen this. But like if it's a bigger problem, right? Than just like choosing to not watch a show, but maybe read a book, right? If it's a bigger problem and there's something really compulsive about a behavior, then the way I think you were right in saying that we want to self-soothe, and it feels very strong, but I'm really curious about why it's so strong and why the need to self-soothe is so strong in some cases. And I think it has to do with the fact that the self-soothing and the behavior is protective, and behind that protection is hurt, is shame, is pain of some kind, so I just want to bring that up because for our listeners especially, because sometimes we need to, rather than medicate, we might need in some way to attend to that pain.
Oh yeah.
And I think we bypass that, and Christmas is a time when we are all in the celebration and we can get into that, and then sometimes what happens is everybody leaves, or you have a bad moment, and all of a sudden you go from a high point down into despair, perhaps, because that pain suddenly becomes overwhelming. So I don't know if you have thoughts on that. I know those are deep thoughts all of a sudden, but
yeah, well, one of the needs for therapists is that I think it's very difficult for people to see to see that in their life. Whereas it's relatively easy when you lay it all out for someone to point out, like, there's your problem. It's hard for us in the midst of it to we know the surface issues.
Right.
My child constantly says this to me, and it pushes my button. I know that. I get that. But what am I doing that has, over the years, built up to push my child into that behavior? It's hard for me to see that.
Right. Okay.
It may be easier for a therapist to dig that out of me.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, especially families, because, and I'm thinking, you're a father, and I know I'm a father as well, and I think sometimes we're harder on our sons than we want to be at times, because there's something in us we see something in our sons
Mm-hmm.
and maybe our daughters too that we don't like about ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes we can be less than ourselves with them because we're unconsciously, I guess, working that out. I know that's happened to me lots of times.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the way that I would approach that would be, to be able to try to be intentional still and thoughtful and noticing, like, when I am tempted to kind of criticize, or when I'm tempted to be harsh, that maybe that's a part of me trying to protect some wound that I have. And so I'm really curious about this idea of, like, looking at oneself, like looking at a part of me that is maybe having a hard time, or maybe struggling, or feels some pain or whatnot, and needs my, like, it sounds weird to say, but needs me to notice that and attend to that. And you know what, I do think it kind of fits some parts of the readings. Like in the responsorial psalm, I think it's powerful that the psalmist says, Lord, let us see your kindness and grant us your salvation. And then it says, kindness and truth shall meet, justice and peace shall kiss. And I know that's just a little blip, but I feel like that's something we have to do for ourselves, right? On some level also, like, we can be truthful to parts of ourselves that are struggling, say during the Christmas season, and kind. Those are not opposites, right? So we can take care of ourselves with kindness. And then when we do that and we actually attend to that pain, then we're different with our families.
Yeah.
We're different with our wife. We're different with our children, because that part of ourselves is not struggling so much. And so to me, penitential can have to do with, an act of penance, an act, say, of like expressing sorrow, but that might be more, you might be more capable of doing that when you actually take care of your own pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something I don't know.
Or
kind of coming up with.
your act of penance is not disordered.
Mm-hmm.
If we think we're doing an act of penance, but we're actually just, it's difficult to come up with a decent example, but sometimes if we're not coming at it from the right angle, then the act of penance can be self-destructive, because we didn't fix the underlying problem to begin with.
Right.
We just shove it all out of our way and say we can't do this, or we bite at someone when they offer that thing. I don't.
No, I think you're right, because I think that what can happen if we just say, "Oh, I have to be penitent,
Mm-hmm.
a penitent," then we don't take care of our own self, really.
Mm-hmm.
We just, maybe there's a part that just comes in kind of harsh and is strict, and it's like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to, and that will probably crack.
Or we use it as an excuse to not attend to our responsibilities and our primary vocations. So, like, if I say, God wants me to pray for 3 hours in my closet, it's hard for me to be a good father and husband. If I'm saying, no, I have to do this as a penitent act, then I'm denying my primary vocation, which is to be present to my wife and children.
Right. Okay. And so I'm suggesting that we spend some time intentionally, and penitentially in prayer, to look at parts of ourselves that are struggling and attend to them. Take some time noticing them, and as a way of preparing oneself to actually do acts of penitence, but also then acts of joy and so on in Advent and Christmas season.
Right. So at the time people are listening to this, we've just had the first Sunday of Advent.
Right.
Right. If you haven't done so already, you've got your Advent wreath. You've set it out on the table.
Right.
Maybe you missed the first Sunday in the first couple of days. Now it's the middle of the week. Maybe it's later in the week. You're going to start this with your kids. You're just going to bring them in. You're going to let that youngest child light the candle, You're going to say a special prayer, all right? Maybe you're going to pray just a little more by yourself that morning or that evening,
right?
As an intentional way and as an act of penance, right, to prepare yourself. What's our third Reverential?
Reverential, that's right.
Well, those things that I've just said are in fact reverential, right? Maybe it's one thing that we always need to work on, my family. Gerry, you don't have little ones anymore, and I'm growing out of the place where I have little ones. But getting to church on time is sometimes very difficult.
That's right.
And the later you are, there's a what do you call it when it's disproportionate, or there's a counter proportionality to the later that you are, the less reverent you feel as you enter the sanctuary. You know what I mean? Because you're just like,
you haven't really prepared for it.
Why are you sitting in the car? We are late for this. Get out! Why do you not have shoes on?
Right.
And you go in there. It's very hard to be reverential for the Holy Liturgy when you are chasing your family and when you're upset with them. And so I want to challenge the folks that have that same issue to take a moment outside the door, no matter how late you are, to say to your family, I love you. Let's just take a second before we go in and take your time.
I love that.
Nobody else cares except God right now, okay?
Yeah. I really love that. And I like that because the way I would look at it with parts of our personality, that there would be a part that gets very angry and uptight and wants to do everything right and be on time, and that part becomes very dominant in those moments. I love the way you described it, where you think you're running late and everything, and when that part is dominant, where it's just, and now it's filled with anger and resentment and frustration, you can't really enter into spirit of holiness at all.
Yeah, and to push away that instinct in us, the what will other people think instinct, especially when you go to a group function like Mass, where it is fitting and proper to be aware of how your family may be distracting others. Absolutely. But let's just for the sake of reverence and for the sake of this being a wholesome thing for your family and a thing that your children, they're going to remember how impatient in your harsh words. They're going to remember that a lot more than they will you laughing with them later on in the day. So think about how much money they're going to have to spend on therapy because the way you act right before Mass.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. I love that you brought that up. And that really is about getting into putting a lot of things in perspective.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and really being mindful of what's going on with ourselves, because it's like it's a forest versus the trees kind of thing. Like we think we're doing all this important stuff around Christmas and the seasons, and we're getting everything right, and we're having to be in Mass, and we're having the tree up, and we're having to buy presents, we're having to do all this stuff, and we end up driving ourselves crazy, and we lose touch with the whole point. Right, this whole point of this season is to grow closer to Christ, right, and to be awaiting Him, and we get lost in that. So I love it, and that actually kind of ties to the readings, because in the readings they're talking about, St. Paul's talking about, he says, conduct yourselves in holiness and devotion, waiting for and hastening the coming of the day of God. And so, are we doing that in a flurry of busyness, and resentment and anger and intolerance to everybody around us, that we actually suck the life out of everyone and ourselves?
Well, and this is almost too big of a topic maybe for another show, but one of the things my wife and I have tried to do the last couple of years is we have like a pre-Advent time of detailed preparation, in which we try to look down the barrel of Advent, and we try to do this mid-October. Look down the barrel of the parties that we need to go to, and we try to, for instance, buy all the canned goods that we need for the season, and it's a big investment. And to try to figure out, so there are no big surprises and slip-ups where we're driving ourselves crazy. And so you actually get, so by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, ideally, this never works out ideally, but ideally you've got 90% of all shopping done. You don't need wrapping paper anymore. You don't need tape. You don't need an extra pair of scissors. You don't need, pumpkin puree. You've got all that stuff. You've got it already, so that you can actually devote yourself to devotion during this time instead of consumerism.
I love it. And the gospel says, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. And that sounds like a really practical way for a family to do that, is to get ready in this season so that at the time of Christmas you can really breathe and just enjoy and let it be a season of where everyone, including mom, including dad, can really relax and pray.
The more relaxed and prayerful you are, the more relaxed and prayerful your children will be, because they're gonna pick up on all that. They read that.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I love it. Well, we're gonna have to wrap up. Beck, I really enjoyed having you on the show.
Jerry, it was great, and I can't tell you how impressed I am here with the Be With the Word Plaza. The receptionist downstairs, she let me up here with only 3 forms of identification.
There we go.
And after 8 escalators and what felt like 15 minutes on the elevator, here we are in the studio. Now I've got to make my way back out.
That's right. Well, it's a pleasure to have you. You bring a certain dynamism that I really enjoy, and so I like that. But not just the dynamism. I really think you bring some real life practical, way to look at it, and how to improve family life and how to improve prayer life. So I'd love to have you on again sometime.
Thank you. I'm on it. Honestly, I joke a lot, but I'm honored to be here. I'm a big fan of the show, and I like what you do, man.
Well, and I hope if you want to hear more of Mac and his wife Catherine, I hope you'll go over to Catholic in a Small Town. Is there a website, or is it just called that?
You can go to macandcatherine.com. You can go to catholicinasmalltown.com. You can get our show wherever you get podcasts, whether it's Spotify or is Apple Podcast still a thing? Do they still do
Apple
that?
Podcast. Yeah, we're on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, cool. I use like Overcast, I think. Anywhere you get it, just look for us. Catholic in a Small Town.
Great. All right, and thank you for joining us. I hope that you will join us again next time. I hope that you will also come on over to our website, soulsandhearts.com. And if you haven't already signed up to get our weekly updates, because if you get the weekly updates, you'll find out about our blogs, and we bring in Catholic therapists and other Catholics from around the country, to just provide helpful resources, helpful information for family life, for having good, healthy mental health. And we also have other podcasts. Dr. Peter also has a coronavirus crisis Carpe Diem podcast. And we have communities as well that you can join, and courses. So Souls and Hearts is we're building it. We're still building it, but it's meant to be a resource for Catholic individuals and families, your one-stop place for mental health help. All right. Well, and if you would subscribe and share and let everybody know about Be With the Word, Hear the Word, and Souls and Hearts, we would love that. So until next time, be still,
be loved,
believe,
and be loved.
Until then, take good care.